telling me that you have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye-opener to see that there are ways that people can use the regulatory framework, if properly structured, to invest 1031 exchange dollars in things that you would not think were like-kind to what they exited from. So it was very impressive. I got to say, you are the first one I've seen pull this off, and I'm pretty hesitant to believe in a lot of these kinds of things. So it's a major feat for me to say, wow, this actually really worked, and it was really cool.
1031 is a way to shelter your income when you sell the thing. The DST is a way to avoid the 1031 and not have to suffer the time penalty.
Our career and during different tax periods, we've seen, these tax avoidance, tax minimization, offshore, all these different strategies undertaken to minimize or avoid taxes. And then I can tell you that, some of them are just not worth the trouble. And so I was skeptical. Admittedly, I was skeptical. I thought, oh yeah, here we go, another one of these, right? And then they say, no, it really is different, right? So look more closely. We looked more closely. We had, honestly, 2 years of conversations. 2 years. Now we were being due diligence at the same time that we were doing due diligence, but 2 years is a long time to be, sort of flirting with the idea of and getting to know the people and getting to really understand the transaction. Yeah, long story short, we got comfortable, although we are not tax attorneys, lawyers, or estate planning attorneys, that at least, from an investment perspective, that, it made sense to sell a highly appreciated asset, get liquid, hold that in this type of a deferred or installment sale type of instrument, and then just be in a position then to do the most important thing. I'm probably stealing your next question, which is time. They say, well, you can't make more time. You can. The Deferred Sales Trust, in a way, allows you to lengthen the investment time horizon for those assets after getting liquid, but before having to feel the tax impact. And from an investment manager's perspective, time horizon is the most important element in investing.
Everybody, hello, and welcome to another Friday Capital Gains Tax Deferred Sales Trust Masterclass or Mastermind, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options, and not having a clear plan is the enemy. And using a proven strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is an amazing way, maybe the best way for you to create and preserve more wealth, especially in times like this. If you're looking to sell cryptocurrency, business, real estate, save a failed 1031 exchange, a primary home, LP, GP positions, carried interest, just about anything you can think of, NFTs, we can use the Deferred Sales Trust not only to defer the tax, but if you're ultra high net worth, above certain limits for married couples, you are looking at, even singles too, everyone's invited here, you're looking at estate tax challenges. We can eliminate that as well. And so there's a lot to unpack there, and this is why we have these weekly masterminds every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. I think we're probably on our 50th one, it feels like. And we just keep growing, and we want to encourage you to keep digging in, keep learning, asking good questions, bring your CPAs, bring your commercial brokers, your luxury realtors, whoever. Or if you are those folks, bring your clients, right? So they can get empowered with this strategy. And I want to encourage everybody to also meet one of my business partners and financial advisor extraordinaire. I call him the CPA Whisperer. And what I love about this gentleman is he thinks not only really well, but he's very personable, very well connected as well. He's more like an entrepreneurial financial advisor and thinks out a bit outside the box. Please welcome to the mastermind with me, Jake Miller. Jake, how are we doing?
Doing very well, Brett. Thank you for that introduction.
Whoa, look at that shirt today. That is incredible. Where did you get that? Is that a Mazatlan? Is that the Mazatlan collection? Is from our sweaters?
Brad, this is a little bit farther out there. This is from the Miami collection.
Ooh, when am I going to get on some of that love? What's up?
It's somewhat controversial. It's all about, the palm trees, but hidden in there we have some, Second Amendment things going on.
Oh, I see that, and I appreciate that. There's some freedom in that, that's pretty good. I like that. Very good, Jake. And so for our audience and our guests and everyone involved and connected with us, we do kind of three things. We talk about the vision, and then we do like a deal close story of the week. We might bring up some common objections or some challenges we've been working through, Jake and I, on some deals and or your deals. You're happy to put it in the chat and bring it up. And then we basically open it up for questions for everybody on the market, on Deferred Sales Trust, on tax strategy, on solving problems. But Jake, let's start with the vision. Could you give us a little bit more of the vision of why we're here and what that looks like, about who the Deferred Sales Trust is eligible, what tends to be a good fit?
Yeah, so literally anybody that has stuff that they're going to sell, and specifically stuff that is highly appreciated. And because of that high appreciation, it's going to be subject to capital gains. So anybody that has a highly appreciated asset that is looking to sell here in the near future could be a candidate for a Deferred Sales Trust.
Excellent. And then kind of the part of the why too that I think is really important is we believe everybody, and we do mean everybody, although it does need to be a big enough gain, because if it doesn't, then it doesn't make sense. And that's typically $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, to have enough pain or enough tax in order to hire us to do the service and make a good ROI on the investment. Deserves an exit plan where they don't feel trapped by capital gains tax. And in fact, the American Bankers Association did a study, and a number of other groups did these studies where they found that's about $32 trillion that's going to pass from the baby boomers to the millennials in the next 20 years. And this is the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. In fact, there's about 77 million U.S. baby boomers alone, and about 10,000 are turning 65 every single day. And 50% of their net worth is tied to high-end primary homes, businesses, and commercial real estate and or private equity. And those are illiquid assets that are highly appreciated, that take a lot of time, energy, toilets, trash, liability. In fact, just closed the deal. We talked about it last week, but I had a chance to dig into it more with the clients. I helped them sell a $2.5 million multifamily property here in Sacramento. I'm also a broker. And so we helped them sell that. And their biggest thing was they could take their NOI from not only 120 to about 180, about a 60% increase. But more so, they could get rid of the toilets, trash, liability, time, energy, stress. They can move from phase 1 to phase 2, and they can diversify their investments and really spend more time with their kids. They have kids, and they want to travel more, and they don't want to have to be doing what they've done for the last 20, 30 years to build their wealth. They're in a second phase of their life, and so this creates that freedom. So what we're about here is creating freedom from feeling trapped by your business or your real estate or your highly appreciated cryptocurrency that you wish you would have got out earlier, that got stuck at Celsius, and now is part of a huge just train wreck that's going on. In fact, I talked with my other client who did an Ethereum exit of about $7.5 million. Fortunately, he did it in August of last year. And so he got out a lot of it, but he still lost. He's still probably losing $1 million at Celsius because it's stuck there. Now, hopefully he's going to get some of that back. He doesn't really know. But I said, hey, what would have happened? His name is Peter. If you would have done the Deferred Sales Trust, he's like, oh my gosh, bro. Not only would the value of that $13.5 million be cut, drastically in half or more, but then second, a lot of it would have been at Celsius, which means third, I'd be fighting for all of it. And so this is the seriousness of what we do. We create an exit plan so that you can diversify and not feel trapped by the capital gains tax. Jake, you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. So again, who is this a good fit for, right? Anybody with $1 million transaction that has highly appreciated asset means that most of that million is appreciation. It can be real estate, it can be crypto, it can be your business, it can be an asset sale, it can be a stock sale. In fact, it can be warrants on a stock. And so there's a lot of different assets that show up on either your personal financial statement or your business balance sheet that, if sold, could qualify for this. Now, again, it's not technically, there's no written line anywhere that has to be $1 million exact or more. But essentially, we want clients to be in the highest tax bracket so that they feel the greatest tax pain when they go through this transaction. And I think, Brad, I pretty much said what you said, just in different words.
Well, that's the beauty of it, right? Because we balance each other out with the different ways of thinking, different backgrounds, different perspectives. And that's part of by the way, the team approach with the Deferred Sales Trust. It's not a one-man superstar. It's actually tax attorneys who are really the superstars. Those guys are amazing. They created the structure, 26-year track record, thousands of closes, billions under management. They're the brain surgeons, what we would say. And then I'm sort of like the nurse who does the ongoing care. I'm what's called the trustee, and we're separate from the tax attorney necessarily. And then Jake is the financial advisor, and he's third party as well. We're all separately necessarily to keep the integrity as well as create an opportunity to build what's called like the dream team, right? That's our goal, to earn the right to be part of your dream team, to support your current dream team who's helped you major wealth. But to add, what I like to say is like the shield with a little spear, right? We each have our sword, shield, and spear, and you have some of your dream team. But we're going to line up, and we're going to build even a stronger, if the Roman Legion, if you've seen the show 300 or the movie 300, they all line up, and it's collectively each of the specialists working in their area and their niche that makes the overall group stronger. And at the end of the day, we also like to say we're just kind of like a group that likes to solve problems. And check this out, Jake. I think you guys are gonna like this. One of my daughters, okay, and I still can't even do this. She can make one side yellow, and like she's 10 years old. And I'm like, how did you do that? And she's like, just like this, Brett. I'm like, well, make it the red color. And then she'll do the red. I make blue. She'll do the blue. And now, she did the yellow, last couple of days. And I'm like blown away. But at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is trying to line up. And by the way, everyone's goals are a little bit different, right? Everyone's situation is a little bit different in life, their time, their tax flow, their cash flow, their retirement, their vision for their wealth, their why. And our goal is to try to understand what that looks like, and then financially and tax flow wise, try to help to move with you, guide you, right, to be able to line it up as perfectly as possible. Now, it's never going to be exactly perfect, but guess what? If there's 30 to 50% in capital gains tax and a 40% estate tax, that's a huge amount of wealth that if we can try to plan and line up and guide you, that can go a long way for retirement, for giving, for new business ventures, for cash flow, for tax flow, for new depreciation schedules, so much there. And that's why we're so passionate about the Deferred Sales Trust. That being said, Jake, are you ready for the deal close story of the week?
Almost ready for that. But Brett, you were just at an event and you invited me, and that was very nice of you and all. And I had some other things going on and I couldn't make it, but tell us about this event. I want to say that I saw pictures with you and Leah and some other people here on the call. Can you just give us some highlights real fast?
Absolutely. And maybe Leah can chime in too. I'd love to hear what she thought of the event. If she's in a safe place, it looks like she might be driving. So if she doesn't meet herself, cool. But otherwise, I will keep talking. So, yeah, it was incredible. It was the first annual MetaCrypto real estate real estate meetup. And
Leah, say that again. That was a whole bunch of words.
Yeah, MetaCrypto real estate meetup. And the vision was to try to connect the crypto meta world with real estate, right? And to bring in experts for what's happening in changing times. So it was really an expert panel situation where we brought in an amazing luxury high-end rock star agent, Ann Newton Kane, and she sells $5, $10, $11 million properties in Lafayette. And we brought in Mr. JB or Joseph Cervantes, who's a commercial real estate broker in Fremont, California. And we brought in Jim Gallup, who is a mortgage strategist, very, very sharp, smart, hyper successful in the Bay Area for many years. We brought in a cryptocurrency expert. That was Dan Hoover, and Dan Hoover, and he worked for a crypto kind of hedge fund or like digital currency hedge fund. We brought in Piper Moretti, who's the actual one of the only crypto realtors who sold properties with realty. Anyways, the whole point of it was to bring in these experts to give us a connection between crypto and real estate, but also like how to build wealth in changing times, what the top secrets were. So we were like scared. We were like, maybe like 5 or 10 people will show up. It'll be like 40, 50 people, which was great. And it went really smooth. We had a professional videographer. We had this really cool spot called Seal Creative Space. And the energy, the vibe, all of it, we went to dinner afterwards. We celebrated Leah's birthday and everyone sung happy birthday. And so the full video is going to drop. We recorded everything for those who couldn't make it on YouTube. And you got to check it out. It was amazing. Leah, do you want to add anything to that? Or are you still in an unsafe position when you're driving, which is totally cool. So I'm going to assume she's in an unsafe spot and see her driving on her thing. So That being
she's
said,
gone.
oh, here she comes. Here she comes. She's here.
Yeah. So I was saying that I think that for the first meetup, it was a success. It was perfect. It really was a beta testing that we were doing, right? So I think that it was phenomenal. All of the information that came from that meetup is just going to get better and better and better. People aren't thinking according to the feedback, and I think Stephanie might be on, and she was one of our the audience that came and joined. But I think that people in the real estate community are kind of just like, let's sell real estate. Let's, whether it's high-end commercial, but they really don't understand the vehicles of like the DST. They don't understand what's coming in technology. And for it to be a free event, it was pretty amazing in terms of the content of information that we were getting. And at the end with the Q&A, a lot of people that deal with, high income, high net worth, high transactions within real estate had a lot of questions about the DST. They couldn't really wrap their head around it and understand, how it works. So it was a successful, in terms of DSTs too as well, it was very successful.
Thank you, Leah, for that feedback. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And because it wasn't like a deferred sales trust event, although naturally, I can't help but drop in some, little slivers in there and little seeds about tax and the guests kind of picked up on that and we talked about it, but it was really about their expertise, what they're doing to help their clients, their best secrets, and really just how to help people grow wealth in changing times. A lot of change, a lot of stuff going on.
I think the biggest thing too, one more point is that again, it wasn't about the DST, but because you did mention stuff about it at the end with the Q&A, people were asking about that and they needed to know more information, which showed me that was of huge value that needs to be out in the community. So the other thing too was that people aren't thinking about Meta, I never can say it right, Meta, and they're not thinking about cryptocurrency and they're not thinking about NFTs, even though that is the future. So having Dan Hoover as this hedge fund guy who's dealing with cryptocurrency, and then Piper talking about like selling real estate, with digital tokens. It's just, this is stuff that's going to happen in the future. Just like DSTs are very important to understand. When people are doing these big sales in technology, they need to have these vehicles to transfer that money into somewhere else, to invest into something else, so they're not getting, taxed. So that's it. No more for me.
No, that's great, Leah. Thank you for sharing. Fantastic. And I actually talked with a gentleman yesterday on the Delaware Statutory Trust. They cold called me and they want me to bring them clients, and I was talking about it. And he's really successful, very successful group. They do lots of Delawares, and I told him we do some Delawares. We have a group. Jake actually does the Delawares for our clients, and we're closing those as a supplement to the Deferred Sales Trust because guess what? It's not just one capital gain tax solution, although we love the Deferred Sales Trust and oftentimes it's the best one. Sometimes it's a 1031 exchange, and sometimes it's a Delaware, sometimes it's an opportunity zone. It might be a CRT if you're extra charitable giving. But it's important to understand your options, right? That the Deferred Sales Trust works for just about any highly appreciated asset. In fact, we've yet to really find anything it doesn't work for, whereas the 1031 or the Delaware only works for investment real estate. And so the concept of how you can take crypto, defer the tax, and then invest into real estate or securities and diversify, like people's minds were like exploding, right? And they're coming up like, what, how, and I'm like, well, let me explain it to you. And so they're just kind of digging in. So yeah, if you're tuning in from the Berkeley event, we welcome you and we're glad you're here. That being said, now Jake, let me know if you're ready for the deal closer of the week or if you want to comment on any of that.
I am now ready. Let's go right in.
Okay, cool. So there's been a couple actually. I don't know, Jake, if you want to talk about yours, you want me to talk about mine, but ours, like what? I have one in mind, but do you have one in mind? I don't want to assume that you don't.
Let's jump into yours, and if we have time, we'll jump into mine.
Okay, cool. So this one's in Texas, and this is a repeat client, okay? And this particular client, it's a client of Jake and I's, so it is actually ours. So there's so many deals going on, I got to keep track, okay? And so it was a $29 million land sale, okay? I don't know if I talked about this one last week or not, but but I'll just say it's a deal closed over the week again, because I'm learning more and more about the deal because it happened so fast. And so he basically locked it up for about 24, exited about 29. So the beautiful part of the deferred sales trust is you don't have to hold the asset for more than a year, okay? Like a 1031 exchange, typically you do, right? And in fact, I think you always do. And so he's able to tie a deal up under contract, bring in capital, or bring in a buyer at 29, and essentially have the trust jump in between, so that the about 5 goes to the trust, right? So it's like a paper sale, if you will. Now he did some improvements during escrow and did some things to negotiate. So he's masterful at this, and it's really exciting. In fact, we'll be at another mastermind in Dallas, Texas with Tony Robbins. Let me know if you guys want to get an invite to that, coming up on August the 23rd, Dallas Fort Worth. And he'll be there. Jake may or may not be able to make it to that event. He was there last year, but it was a very successful deal, and so much so that he wants to bring us even more business and more referrals. But that's the deal closed story of the week. Jake, any thoughts on that?
Brett, how long is this deal? How long have we been in on this deal? I mean, I think sometimes people think that, hey, like I got a call this week and they're like, yeah, I want to close like tomorrow.
Yeah, great question. So it depends on if you mean how long has he been watching these videos, right? So honestly, known the client now for 6 months from the first time 5 months from the first time he closed it. But he said, Brett, I had been watching you guys and your videos for like a year and a half, and I just never called you because I wasn't quite ready yet. And so for anyone listening to this right now, you're watching this, right? I mean, and if you're a business professional wanting to serve your clients at a higher level, we encourage you to start creating content on videos and just documenting your journey and sharing your journey via YouTube, via podcast, going on other people's podcasts. And so he kind of called me and just said, I kind of like already know you. He the kind of way he put it, I've heard you talk we probably put in 500 videos and I don't know how many, 1,000 hours. I don't even know if that's what that is on the videos now. We put so much content out there. So that answer the question, Jake. What do you think?
Yes, in the sense that a lot of times when somebody needs something like this, we are subject to the decisions of other people, namely, whoever the buyer is, the negotiation that goes on. Sometimes they have to get financials together. We had a client back east, 18 months later, still working on it, right? And, sometimes deals move fast. I think we helped some people doing a real estate deal, and this is a little bit faster than we like, but 6 days, we had it all done. But typically this is something that we get involved with them and their advisors so that we're all on the same page. And that usually produces a much better outcome, much calmer outcome. Clients are educated. The other advisors are educated. People are not trying to do really fancy things sometimes. We did talk to a deal about a year ago, Brett, and the guy was selling $100 million development. And with their estate planning attorney, they were trying to devalue the property and devalue the deal because of lack of marketability, because there were two partners, and trying to do things for like legacy planning that actually at the end of the day became unnecessary. Because if you're going to do like the deferred sales trust, it kind of becomes the keystone strategy, although you may still implement a lot of these other strategies to a lesser degree once you've understood how the deferral strategy of the deferred sales trust works.
And let's talk about why that is, right? Because most strategies, you're maintaining ownership. It's really understanding. It's literally the foundation and the characteristic of what you're doing. Like a 1031 exchange, it's what's called a continuity strategy, which means you're taking ownership of one investment real estate and you're trading it for ownership in another investment real estate. And so you're just staying in that same, it's almost like you're staying in that same species, right? If you think of it like animals, right? Or something like that, right? That same characteristic is all ownership. And so to get some of these major, transformational, wealth building strategies, you got to change the whole characteristic. You got to become a lender, right? You got to get outside your taxable estate. And so on deals that are like $100 million, ask yourself, let's start at the foundation, the bedrock of this deal. There's a tower in San Francisco And it's basically known as like maybe one of the biggest debacles a developer ever did. And one of my clients, he's the number one architect in San Francisco. We're selling an apartment complex for him now. He's looking at Deferred Sales Trust. Anyways, he's in the tower right next to it, and I go and I spend time with him, and it's downtown San Francisco. It's beautiful. It's called the Millennial Tower. You can look it up. But basically, what happened is this tower was built not all the way to the bedrock. They built this, I don't know, it's called 50, 60 stories. And they didn't go to bedrock. And so now it's starting to lean. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is the leaning tower of the disaster, right? And because they didn't go all the way to the bedrock, the foundation, and get to the root cause of what they needed to do. And now it's a disaster. So his tower is right next to it. There's two towers. And the one that his is like a smaller one that they didn't need to bedrock. It's like a shorter one. And the other one's leaning that way. And he's like, oh, and I'm looking out the window. And he's like, yeah, it's that one right there. I'm like, well, what happens if it's just going to fall on us? He goes, oh, no, that's okay. It's leaning that way. You're like, well, what? Like, this is scary. So he's going to sell the thing. But the point is, what are you trying to solve? And it does that actual thing solve, like an opportunity zone, for example. It does do some capital gains tax deferral for a short time, and then there's some elimination of that capital gains tax over a 10-year period of time, but it has nothing to do with the stepped up basis. There's no liquidity, there's no real diversification, there's some high risk on potentially the deal in construction. It takes a lot, and it has to have a lot of things line up. What's beautiful about the deferred sales trust and why we think it's the keystone strategy is because not only does it solve the problems of capital gains tax deferral, but also eliminating estate tax if you do the DST plus, but it's so flexible, right? It's so entrepreneurial, or it's so completely retire, right? It's like you can't really put it in a box per se, and it gives you lots of flexibility to diversify, to dollar cost average, to be passive, to be active, to move it outside the taxable estate. And then when you see that the Rubik's Cube is all disjointed, but it can become more like this, it becomes clearer why we think it's a great fit for you. So Jake, you want to add anything to that?
At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we get all the advisors around the table so that they understand this, right? I think the biggest point that we can make is that we don't want surprises right before close, because that, more than anything else, just puts people at unease. And we want them to be at ease, right? We want them to be comfortable. And so bring your advisors in early. Let's take a look at this, at the beginning stage, not at the 11th hour, simply because then everybody can look at it with a level of confidence, and they're not being rushed into anything, and they can get all their questions answered.
Absolutely. So this is moving us into the third part of the Deferred Sales Trust Mastermind. By the way, if you want to learn more about this, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can also connect with Jake by going to strategictaxsolutions.com. Each one of us would love to talk with you and go through it. Let's open up for questions. If anyone has questions, you can just put in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself, and you can have a live deal. You could also just have a comment or have a question on anything we just said or anything about the Deferred Sales Trust. We are here to answer your questions. So go ahead and unmute yourself, put in the chat, and say hello to us. And if we don't, we'll keep talking, which is cool too. We're happy to do that. Jake and I can talk. That's part of what we're good at. So we'll keep talking. I actually had a question here. I'm looking at Jake. And I'll just kind of give a synopsis. I won't give the client's name, but he says, one of the last things before deciding to use the DST as appropriate for me for my long-term goals is to get an idea of what my nest egg will look like starting in like January 2023 and modeling out 5, 10, and 20 years under a couple different scenarios. Scenario one, I just pay all the capital gains tax on the proceeds and I invest the balance into whatever I want. Scenario number two, I put all of my net proceeds into a DST and invest within the trust. So one of the common misconceptions, Jake, here, and the premise is, if I just pay the tax, I can invest in whatever I want, which assumes or concludes that if I put in the Deferred Sales Trust, I cannot invest in whatever I want. So Jake, would you clear that up? What are the differences between investment options, if any, for the Deferred Sales Trust and just paying your tax and doing whatever you want?
Yeah. Essentially, paying the tax and doing whatever you want, the one thing that allows you to do above and beyond a Deferred Sales Trust is that you can go buy that Ferrari. Now, the funny thing is even if you do the Deferred Sales Trust, you can still take a distribution out that is taxable and go buy that Ferrari. So essentially, at the end of the day, is from like an investment standpoint, you are not limited. Should you use an appropriate financial advisor who is unbiased when it comes to asset classes? You can buy life insurance as an asset. My goodness, what a thing. You can buy real estate. You can buy crypto. You can buy that Ferrari if it's part of a luxury car rental business and you are not the sole driver, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do within the Deferred Sales Trust in purchasing and investing and reinvesting in assets that would otherwise fall on your personal balance sheet or your business balance sheet, but now they're going to be assets held for investment purpose inside of the Deferred Sales Trust. Now, again, you're going to go buy a house and you're going to live in it. You're going to go buy that Ferrari and you're going to drive it personally. You're going to go on a trip, like one of those 3-month cruises personally, and you're not bringing your entire company with you, right? So stuff that you're going to do personally, and it's just like spending, you're going to take a distribution from the trust, or you can just pay the taxes, right? So like in either scenario, you're going to pay the taxes on stuff you do personally. The power and advantage of the Deferred Sales Trust is that you control the timing of when you're going to incur those taxes. And of course, you can continue to reinvest it and use the government's money. Yes, you owe the government part of that money. You can use the government's money to reinvest with until such time that you want to take it personally.
So well said. Absolutely spot on. I don't even know if I can even add anything else to that. And I think there's high stakes and people, this is a big deal and they're entrusting us with this Deferred Sales Trust. And so there's this, and by the way, there is a separation necessarily to have a promissory note and to have a third-party trustee. But it's not unlike what you did with the 1031 exchange. It's not unlike what you maybe done with an IRA or 401k company. It's a separate company for you. There's like a custodian. The difference is you're changing ownership from unilateral control to a direct lender or the lender, right? A secured lender is a better word. And you have indirect control, which gives you the rights and protections to foreclose should the promissory note not perform on the investments. And also we can refinance and adjust the note to pay you out when you want it. So exactly what Jake said. If you want to spend it on something personal, great. Let's have a distribution come out and you go pay the tax on that small amount. And these other millions of dollars are still working for you. And so this is often the talk track I go through with clients. I say, okay, well, what do you want to spend it on? They're like, well, I'm planning on putting it in an investment. I say, okay, great. Well, if you're going to put it on an investment, then why don't we just do that with the trust? Oh, that makes sense, right? Yeah, because if you think about it, if it's $10 million in the trust and there's $4 million of capital that's being deferred, it's really not all your money. It's really the government's money. And the government's giving you, $4 million to invest wherever you like and live off of that interest, right? So sometimes we'll just turn up the interest payments. Again, this is what we call it the tax flow. See my shirt, Jake? By the way, you got a shirt coming your way, Jake. It's coming your way.
Very
You
nice.
earned it.
Nice. I was going to comment on that. I was like, hey, where'd the new shirt come from?
Yeah. Tax flow, not just cash flow, right? Really important to understand. And so we're going to look at the tax flow game. We're going to say, what's your income tax, right? What's your capital gains tax? What's your estate tax? And what's your cash flow? And we're going to try to mirror these up to make it as congruent as we can via, again, this analogy of a Rubik's Cube, right? And that being said, same thing with your investments, right? So is it better to do tax deferred money into these investments? And so the next thing he says, and it's interesting, and I think this gets to it, he says, right now I'm leaning towards taking the tax hit and keeping things simple. Right. And this is really important, right? Because the biggest thing for folks, and this is part of why we're doing these masterminds, is to try to get transparency and keep it simple. And so most of the time, we've never been lenders, right? We're not bankers, right? We are just owners of properties or assets or business owners or, all of the cryptocurrency, all that. And it's just the ownership, right? And then all along the way, we've been working with the banks, but we've never been the bank. And so as far as keeping it simple, I would say it is simple. It's new. It's not something you're used to. And so that makes it seem like, oh, this is really complex. And at the end of the day, you're just a bank and you've lent the funds to the trust. And we even think of it like a delayed tax trust. Okay. Delayed tax trust where you're going to pay tax as you receive it. And by the way, you've done it with an IRA, you've done it with 1031 exchange. So I'm going to be talking to this gentleman hopefully this afternoon and clarifying and trying to make it even simpler. But if you have that same concern or challenge, we welcome you to connect with us and go through it. By the way, we do this at all no cost, no obligation. You can talk with our tax team, me or Jake, and we will break it down and walk through it with you. And if you decide not to use the trust, no problem. If you do, we get paid at close of escrow. But if for whatever reason you don't want to use it, there's no problem. So that is that question. Jake, you want to add anything else to that at all?
Well, I'm getting some questions, and it's from a fellow EXP realtor here in the group. And it has to do, I believe, with marketing. So to kind of put this out to their client list, saying, hey, this is a solution. Should you sell your highly appreciated piece of real estate, you should consider the Deferred Sales Trust. There are some comments coming from the attorney of this individual saying, hey, be careful about holding yourself out there if you're not a tax person yourself, and if you're not a financial person, if you don't have the right licensure. The thing of it is in a piece of marketing material like this, it's important that you can quote somebody that does have the right licensure, right? We have a group of professionals here on the call, as well as who we work with all the time. And I think it would be appropriate to put together a really nice and well done piece of literature or an email or, a brochure of some kind, where you can like have myself quoted or have Brett quoted or have, so I own 3 tax practices. Okay. So any of our CPAs could provide some commentary. If you would like, if anybody in this group, Brett, I think this should be a good exercise. If anybody would put together kind of like a templated piece that they'd like to send out to their clientele, I think you and I could review it. And if we need to put in somebody's name for a particular comment or what have you to fill in the blanks, I think we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure if I know the question for sure, but maybe just they need to know that you're not providing tax or legal advice, and you're not the CPA or tax attorney. And by the way, Jake and I are not the CPA or tax attorney either. We rely on the brain surgeons to be able to do that because they're the creators of this. And which is also, by the way, why we don't offer, and I don't offer anything else really outside of the Deferred Sales Trust besides something like a 1031 exchange or Delaware statutory trust that have been tried and true, because a lot of these things haven't been around for a long time. Like I get people calling me like, they were trying to call me on the monetized installment sale a couple of years back. And I said, no, I'm not touching it, right? Because our tax team doesn't approve of it, right? And for these reasons, and I'm not touching it. And if you guys get through all the IRS cases you have going on, and you get through all the audits, and your actual tax attorney that's providing it is doing that, and you do this for like 20 years, then I'll probably, take a look at it. But in the meantime, we have a track record of 26 years, thousands of closes, billions under management, and we rely on their perfect track record to provide lifetime audit defense. So it is bringing them to a call, right, like this, bringing them to the no-cost call with the tax attorneys, bringing their CPA and their folks that are skeptical, or, and they should be, because they probably have never heard of it, and they've probably never done it, right? And so they're going to be cautious, knowing that they're likely never going to say yes if they've never seen it or done it, right? And that's okay. But I can tell you 99% of the time you bring them to a call with us and the tax team, that they all join us. They all join us, and they see it and they get it. They sign the NDAs and they're there. So I would just change your mindset to saying you don't need to be the CPA or tax attorney. And of course, you're not providing the legal tax advice. And I would ask you too, do you provide a 1031 exchange qualified intermediary contact? The answer is yes, you do. You probably say, here's a 1031 qualified intermediary, right? And you might talk a little bit about a 45-day 180, but consult with them. And, someone might ask you about a business tax return, and you give them a CPA. And someone might ask you about a financial advisor, and you give them Jake's name. So that's all you're doing there. I would keep it really simple. You don't need to come out guns a-blazing. Just say, hey, if this is a possibility to save your failed 1031 exchange, or to be able to move your primary home without paying tax, would you be open to a call with, Brett and Jake and the team?
And if you need additional like follow-up information, Brett has literally like thousands of videos. I'm sure there's testimonials from people talking about the tax attorneys, talking about the process they went through that can help get them to that next meeting with us.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? Like you don't want to overcome people's logical objections and fears with logic. You actually, what we've learned through, if you haven't got the book yet, by the way, get this book. This is Russell Brunson, okay? Expert Secrets. And he talks about this idea of using story to help people overcome false beliefs of whatever that thing may be. And so in their mind, that person has a story of why this is too good to be true. By the way, I had that same story in 2009 at Marcus and Millichap. We were sitting in the office and they're teaching us. We thought we were the Navy SEALs of the 1031 exchange. And they start teaching us about the Deferred Sales Trust. And we're going, this is too good to be true. But they just started to tell us the stories and the deals that were closing. And we started to get on with the CPAs, tax attorneys, and we kept overcoming all of their objections and saying yes. And so Russell goes into this in detail, but basically it's you need to come up with a better story. And we have those stories. And one of the best ones is David Young for 2 years did a due diligence on the entire program. And David Young's ran with Bill Gross at PIMCO, one of the most renowned financial professionals in the last 30 years. And they built PIMCO up to 1.2 trillion. They retire. David and five of the right-hand guys start a group called Anfield Capital. They do a 2-year due diligence. The entire thing of this, and they are on the DST inner circle, and they can support our clients, Jake and I, as another set of eyes and ears. And these guys manage money for the biggest, best, and smartest people in the world. Like they really do. They're phenomenal. And they're a part of our dream team, right? And so what we always say to the skeptic and the person who's saying, well, I'm not sure that the CPA is going to say yes. We'll say, well, if it's good enough for David Young and his legal team and all the time and due diligence for 2 years of doing the work, is it good enough for you? Or is it at least good enough for you to take a look at the next step? Sign the NDA, spend the time. So you as the client or you as the agent, you encourage your client to not have their CPA come along in the rear view mirror, but to be in the passenger seat as I go through the journey with us. And if you do that, we're confident, again, 99% of the time, they say yes, they join you. So your goal is not to be the tax attorney brain surgeon. Your role is to be the setter. Set the meeting, bring them in here, and we will help you educate them on the Deferred Sales Trust. Jake, does that answer the question, hopefully?
I think it does. I think it's very, very, very helpful. It's a follow-up to a very lengthy email, but I think that it includes most of the responses we needed. There is someone here who would like to discuss their deal on. That's Eddie. Eddie talked a little bit last time at the very end of our meeting, and he has progressed a little bit further down the road. This is interesting because Eddie is not the seller. Eddie is the buyer. Eddie, can you kind of tell us about what's going on?
Yeah, so we're doing a business acquisition deal for 18 million. And from the research that we found out about the seller, he's actually investing that 18 million into another business. When I explained to them what the trust was, as briefly as I could, they became interested in it because obviously they wouldn't have to pay as much tax as they would have done if they took out 18 million and put it into another bank account. So today we myself, Jake, and my 2 other business partners are actually going to go on a call today to discuss this trust and how it can work in both favors, us purchasing the business and also them finalizing the sale and taking the money out without any tax implications.
I love it, Eddie. You're taking action and you're using the strategy to help unlock and solve a problem, right? Because I also always say we're not in the business of even buying businesses, selling businesses, selling tax deferral strategies, selling real estate. We're in the business of solving problems. And to the extent you can solve the problems with people and others and help enough people get what they want, you can have everything you want, right? Zig Ziglar said it really well. So I love that you're taking action. And again, you're not being the expert in it. You're just saying, I think there might be an opportunity. Would you take a call? As simple as that. And then you're a fly on the wall and you're going to absorb more and more. It's like learning a language. Like Jake speaks at least 2 languages. And I speak a little bit of Spanglish, but really just English. But if I wanted to learn, Spanish with Jake and I would go hang out in Mexico for a couple of years. That's really the absorbing that, all of it, the culture, the language, the dialects, the tone, the nuance, that's all a part of, language. It wouldn't be Jake just, trying to teach me on a Zoom meeting, right? Like that wouldn't be enough. So this is cool. This will give you a chance to get on the inside, and then hopefully that call takes you to the next step and you get on with the tax attorneys, and then the momentum builds. And then as soon as you get that first deal close story, which is always the hardest one, you lean on that, right? And you lean on those referrals, and you lean on us to help you provide even more. So Eddie, what particular questions do you think might come up that you'd like us to brainstorm or mastermind today, or whatever else is on your mind?
I think right now they just want a big explanation as to how the trust works, the steps in it, And if there's, will there be any problems? Well, are there any problems that they could run into?
Excellent. I don't know if Rebecca, our other business partner, real estate, luxury, Tahoe, Truckee area, if she's available, I want to pass that to Rebecca, and I want to see. She's also part of the coaching program, all above. She's amazing. We were just hanging out in the Tahoe Mastermind. That was awesome. So Rebecca, question to you: like, what are the steps of the Deferred Sales Trust? How would you go about setting one of these up? What do you think?
Oh gosh, you put me on the spot there, Brett. So setting up a deferred sales trust is actually fairly easy. Obviously setting up a call with you and Jake and getting that going. But setting it up, it only needs to be done before the transaction hasn't gotten to buyers removing all their contingencies. So that's a timing thing. And then beyond that, it's everybody getting on the same page and getting the property or the business moved into the trust.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. So step one is, of course, the consultation, right? Which we're just going to, find out if they qualify. They have an $18 million sale. I imagine they have more than $1 million gain. So that's simple, right? Boom. Step two is just, you sign these conditional engagement agreements, and that just basically states, should you use the trust, that you would pay the team, right? But for any reason you don't use it or the deal blows up, you don't pay us. Step three is actually forming the trust. They have to name the trust, so they could call it the England, 2022 DST or whatever they want to call it, right? And it's a single entity EIN, and then the trust itself, with the Deferred Sales Trust tax attorneys, will be inserted into the asset purchase agreement or the PSA via typically an addendum and or via an assignment of interest. Like if it's an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp, it's all a little bit different. It's never a cookie cutter, but essentially the owner is going to assign the interest to this newly formed trust. And if there's multiple partners, each partner would have their own trust. Okay. Then at the close of escrow, the funds go to the trust, right? Instead of going to their personal account, which would be taxable. And they, in exchange, get what's called a promissory note, right? They're a lender to the trust. So that's their asset that they hold. That's their security, right? And then Jake builds out a financial plan. And that financial plan, they approve or disapprove or give ideas. And I approve or disapprove of give ideas. And collectively, the funds get invested. And then they get paid back their return. So Eddie, what questions do you have on that so far?
I'll be honest, you just explained everything I wanted to ask. So yeah, I think I'm good on my side. We'll find out a bit more today after the call. I know that the seller has multiple businesses. So if this deal goes through and they do use the trust, I know they'll be very happy to use the trust for the rest of their businesses.
Let's ask that question, Rebecca. What if they want to do multiple sales into one trust? What's the answer to that?
Multiple sales into one trust, it has to be over one tax year in order to put it into one trust. Otherwise, it could be multiple trusts created. Correct? Am I wrong?
So there's a mix stuff there, right? So if it's a certain dollar volume above a certain amount, we have what's called a DST plus, right? And that DST plus, and by the way, this is part of why it's the masterclass, right? We're learning this. And so I want to, Jake and I have it, and we want everyone else to have it. So that's the only way to have it is to engage that part of your brain that says, oh, I'm not quite sure, but let me give it a shot. And then it starts to become crystal clear, right? So no matter what the size of the deal, by the way, we have a DST plus. So it can be 100 million, 18 million, it can be 15 deals at 18 million, multiple businesses, and it can be a DST plus, and multiples can move into that DST plus no matter what the size. Or we have a DST 1.0 or just a regular DST. Then it's 5 million per person per year in deferral before there's an interest charge, okay? And so in this scenario, if it's 18 million, depending on how many partners there are, right? And if it's, let's say, 3 partners, and then we could just do a DST regular, okay? And then Rebecca is right. The new calendar year, the DST 1.0, we could basically stack 10 million per person per year into the same trust, okay? Boom, boom, boom. or a combination of a DST Plus and a DST 1.0 or DST regular. So, Eddie, does that answer the question on that one?
Yes, it does. I've got another question. This is more for myself and my business partners. If we wanted to put money in the trust to reinvest into properties overseas, I think I spoke to Jake about this over WhatsApp. How would that work?
Yeah, so the proceeds first must go into the trust because of a sale of something. So there has to be an eligible transaction first. Now, once the proceeds are already there, those proceeds can invest in a number of different assets. And those assets may or may not have holdings abroad in another location. Now, just having the trust directly own it, there might be some complications there, and we need to get the attorneys, the tax attorneys involved. And they would probably recommend some kind of US structure that is the owner of those foreign holdings. But every scenario is a little bit different. We definitely get their blessing on how we acquire those assets in other countries with this US trust.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Brett, did you want to add anything there?
No, that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, the trust can go into other business ventures or other assets, and it doesn't have to be just in the U.S., but we do have to keep the diversification, liquidity in mind, and based upon their risk tolerance, right? So it's not like a cookie cutter, one size fits all, and we will have to review the deal and understand it, right? And so, again, back to the Rubik's Cube. Not only is it's the risk tolerance, it's the tax deferral, it's the cash flow. It's a number of things, and those investments we'll want to look at, right? And work with you to do that. But yeah, we're very entrepreneurial and very business friendly when it comes to the Deferred Sales Trust and investing with it to create more wealth, because that's the whole point, right? We want the guys to go create a new business, new venture, and make another 18 million, and then move that into the Deferred Sales Trust. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Now, Brett, I can think of one other thing that might be relevant for Eddie and his deal. And so the owners that Eddie and his partners are going to buy the business from, they already have in mind another business that they plan to acquire. Originally, they were planning on having to pay taxes and then going and buying that business. Can you go over the liquidity requirement just so that Eddie has this as an understanding going into the deal and how the discussion might go later today?
Yeah, great question. And so I'm going to just use simple numbers here because I don't know all the details, but I'm going to imagine it's basically a zero basis. It's an $18 million sale. And I'm just going to use 40% of the tax, right? 40% of the tax. It could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. And so that is basically $7.2 million. So I'm going to imagine they own it free and clear right now as well. So I'm going to take 18 million minus 7.2 million gives me $10.8 million if they didn't use the trust, okay? Whereas the trust scenario, if they did, let's imagine they deferred all of the tax and all 18 million goes into the trust, they have the opportunity to get up to 80% into active businesses, purchase deals, okay? So 80% is $14.4 million. So first of all, the simple math is you take 14.4 minus the 18 minus the 7.2, which is 10.8, and let alone that's an extra 3.6 million right there. And so it's actually not a deterrent to them. They actually get an extra 3.6 million to be able to go into business ventures that otherwise they wouldn't even have. But in this scenario, it's all tax deferred. Not only that, they have 18 million versus 10.8 million. Right? Now we got to keep 20% in liquid investment grade securities, with Jake Miller, the financial advisor on that, right? That they approve, still earning interest, still building wealth, right? But that other 80% can turn right around and go into an LLC with them and purchase that new business venture. Jake, does that answer the question?
Yes, I think it's just important that as people are looking to reinvest, in a 1031 exchange, if you already know what property you're going into and you're not on the hunt for one, right? And it's just one piece of real estate into another piece of real estate, not businesses, because 1031s don't work for businesses, right? So in that one scenario, 1031 would be more advantageous because there's not a 20% liquidity requirement and you're able to roll everything over. However, 95% of the time or more, life is not so perfect. And oftentimes a deferred sales trust does make a lot more sense, especially outside of the real estate world. And in your world, Eddie, right now, buying up businesses it's just important and imperative that we are letting them know that we're able to defer the taxes. They don't have to pay taxes. They can pay attorney fees instead of taxes. The difference is significant. But they do have a requirement that they do maintain in liquid assets, assets that can be raised or sold within 3 to 5 business days, oftentimes marketable securities, that they understand that that is a requirement going in, that they are able to reinvest the bulk majority or 80% of their proceeds in the next business. But they do have to maintain some of that liquidity. And I think, Brett, maybe just a little bit further, why do they have to have that liquidity? What is that liquidity good for? What does that help us show the IRS?
Yeah, and first of all, it's not like an IRS rule or like a minimum distribution like on an IRA rule. It's actually just, as the deferred sales trust has evolved, we found that it keeps the integrity of the trust, because there is a payment that needs to be paid, right? And there are expenses to the trust, and there's a trustee, financial advisor, and it's a business trust, and it's just like if a business were to go to a bank and say, I want a $10 million loan or $8 million loan or whatever. The bank's going to say, great, we'll give you that loan, but they're going to say, we want some reserves out of our bank just in case, right? And that's the whole idea, is to protect the integrity of being able to A, pay you back your payments when they're due, and B, be able to pay for the business expense of the trust to keep the integrity of the trust. And so that is a safety or a guardrail we put on. It's not like an IRS code or a law. It's something that the tax attorneys wisely said, you know what? We want to be conservative not only in the tax law, but we want to be conservative also in the investments. And we've never had one fail yet. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results, okay? But we've never had one fail legally or financially, right? And so we're not in the business of doing that. And by the way, most clients are really happy with that. In fact, the banks look at that as liquidity, which oftentimes, now I can't say all banks do, but a lot of them do. You can use that as a way to help them qualify for a loan, right? That they're getting on, because the trust is paying them those payments, and the funds are readily available, right, to be able to pay them. So hopefully that answers the question, Jake.
Absolutely. And again, maybe if I were just to reiterate it in other words, I mean, we have this promissory note, and we have to prove to the IRS at any given time that there is money that's not locked up in a hard asset, that we have the ability to pay on that promissory note, even if we're not required to, if it's in the DST 1.0, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point too. Exactly. We have the ability to do that, keeps the integrity, and then hopefully that business is cash flowing, and also, and that, so that 20% is growing. And it's not oftentimes that everyone takes 80%. That's, a lot of times they're taking 30 or 40 and keeping the other 60 in liquid investment grade security. So it's just, we want to work with you, look at it, digest it. Again, it's not a one size fits all, but those are some of the guardrails. That being said, we are up against the time. Jake Miller, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to find you?
We've got an 800 number, 1-800-773-1848, or strategictaxsolutions.com. There's a little booking link right there where they can schedule a time to go over their deal with me. And if it's a good fit, then I bring it to you, Brett.
Amazing. I want to thank everyone for being a part of this mastermind. We don't take it lightly. You meet with us every Friday, take an hour out of your day to digest and to learn and to grow and to be encouraged and challenged. And I want to encourage everybody to have an exit plan when you go to exit for yourself or for your clients, so that you never have to feel trapped by capital gains tax ever again. And if that's by using a deferred sales trust, amazing. If we can give you a backup plan for a failed 1031, incredible, right? We want to give that to you. And we want to encourage you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about the Deferred Sales Trust, or Strategic Tax Solutions with Jake to learn more. As well, you can check out the new book, and Jake's going to be in the book. He's like chapter 3, man. He's like rocking and rolling. We also got a cool guy named Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, and this book is called Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. And it's my story on the Deferred Sales Trust, basically, right? And my journey as an entrepreneur, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the Cheesecake Factory days, the living with my brother in a small condo, the people saying this is too good to be true, it'll never work, all that cool, fun kind of story. So you can take a peek at that, hitting an Amazon near you very soon. That being said, we appreciate everybody. Please rate, review, subscribe. Please share this so someone can be inspired to. And we will talk to everyone real soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.